Hello there. On the afternoon of April 2nd, 2014, a 60-year-old man named Wu, a resident of a village located on the outskirts of Dongren City, Guizhou Province, was ferrying people across the Xinjiang River in his boat as usual. It was the last month of the dry season, so the riverbank was very dry and the water level was low compared to the rainy season, making Mr. Wu's job much more difficult. Around 11 o'clock in the morning, while he was waiting for the last passengers to cross the river before heading home just a few dozen meters away to have lunch, while rowing the boat, he noticed an unfamiliar object floating and bobbing on the river, gradually drifting towards the bow of his boat, which caught Mr. Wu's attention. From a distance, he recognized that the object was pale orange in color and had a curved shape quite large. At first, he thought it was a sofa chair with armrests that someone had thrown into the river, but as he rowed closer, he was startled and frightened. The horrifying scene before his eyes was a floating corpse, tied up with ropes with the head and upper body wrapped in a pale orange tarp. Mr. Wu immediately called the police, and upon receiving the report, the police quickly arrived at the scene and retrieved the body for examination. The tarp was tightly wrapped around the victim's head and upper body to prevent it from coming loose. When they removed the tarp, they discovered that it was the body of a young woman, approximately 20 to 25 years old, and had been submerged in the water for a long time. The victim had multiple open wounds on her face, neck, and chest, indicating that this was a murder scene. The police began investigating the pale orange tarp, which had a clearly printed brand name of a fertilizer company and the words Kali Chloride on it. The victim was tightly bound with ropes, and a large concrete brick with 2 holes was tied to the body to prevent it from floating on the water. The police questioned whether the perpetrator lived near the upper reaches of the Xinjiang River. Upon examining the body, no identification card, bank card, mobile phone, or other related items were found to verify the victim's identity. The forensic evaluation revealed that the scalp, fingernails, and toenails had peeled off due to the degree of decomposition. Based on the forensic examination, the estimated time of death was approximately 2 weeks prior to the discovery of the body on April 2nd, 2014, placing the time of death around March 17th. There were multiple wounds on the victim's neck and chest, identified as being caused by a sharp-edged weapon, and there was also a stab wound to the heart, indicating that the perpetrator had used a sharp knife in the attack. During the autopsy, the forensic doctors suspected that the victim might have been pregnant, as the abdominal area of the body was larger than normal. Although the decomposition had caused the abdomen to swell, it could not have swollen to that extent. During the examination, they made an even more heartbreaking discovery inside the uterus of the deceased. There was a fetus in a downward position. Based on the weight level of development and the position of the fetus's head, they determined that this woman had been murdered in the 7th month of her pregnancy and was expecting a baby boy. This case became a double homicide, an unforgivable act against a pregnant woman in the late stages of pregnancy. It was not only a serious criminal responsibility under the law, but also an extremely cruel and condemnable act, especially considering that the perpetrator must have been aware of the victim's pregnancy. According to the police analysis, the unfortunate death of this female victim is likely related to her pregnancy. For example, the perpetrator may have wanted to conceal this relationship and not accept her and the child, or there may have been some significant conflicts that led him to act so cruelly. Finding the biological father of the child may be a breakthrough in solving the case. Based on the hydrological analysis of the Xinjiang River, the location where the body was found is estimated to be 3 to 5 kilometers away from the discovery site. This conclusion is based on recent hydrological conditions where the water level is low and flowing slowly during the dry season. The police have made conclusions based on the time of death, distance, and weather conditions to aid in the investigation. The story begins when the police collect DNA samples from the unborn child and compare it with the DNA of individuals with criminal records stored in the national database. The results show a complete match between the DNA sample of the child and that of Hu Qian. Previously, Qian had been involved in a marriage fraud case and had her DNA collected and stored by the Nantong police, so the DNA comparison yielded a match in this case. The Guizhou Criminal Police immediately contacted the Nantong and Jiangsu police to inquire further about Hu Qian's involvement in previous criminal activities. The story reveals that Qian had deceived a man and demanded a large sum of money through a marriage fraud in Jiangsu. However, when the Nantong police learned that Qian was pregnant, they allowed her to stay outside while awaiting trial. Just a few months later, Hu Qian's body was found on the Xinjiang River, suggesting a possible connection between the marriage fraud case and the linked murder case. Liu Min, the person deceived by Hu Qian, was infuriated to learn that he had been tricked out of a large sum of money. He provided information to the police and demanded the return of 80,000 yuan. Although he had a motive to commit the crime, there was no time for Liu Min to do so because he had been working diligently without taking any days off. Despite having a motive, the evidence against Liu Min as an external offender was solid, with multiple witnesses confirming it. Therefore, the police eliminated Liu Min from the list of suspects. They also visited Hu Qian's residence based on the address listed on her household registration information in the National Population Database. A group of police officers went to Qian's house in hopes of learning more about her circumstances from her relatives in order to determine potential suspects through her social connections. The victim's family has a brother named Hu Fam. According to Hu Fam, their mother passed away when Hu Qian was only 9 years old, and since then, the three of them relied on each other. Their house is located in a small village in Pingjiang District, Dongren Province. Apart from an electric fan and a small TV, there are no valuable items in the house. Hu Fam mentioned that since childhood, Qian had a habit of lying to their father, who had a hot temper. Qian was once beaten by their father and angrily left home when she was only 16 years old. Even after their father's death, Hu Qian never returned home, and she had little contact with the family while working far away. Hu Qian not only experienced a difficult childhood, but also had a life full of freedom and upheaval as she grew up. At the age of 16, Qian had simultaneous relationships with two men, and she later gave birth to a baby girl with one of them. However, the relationships didn't last, so she decided to give the child to the other man for upbringing. In 2013, Qian started dating a taxi driver named Tang Zhao, and they were living together. Based on the account from the victim's brother, the police quickly located Tang Zhao. He confessed to the police that they were truly in love and living together. However, around 9 p.m. on March 15, 2014, Qian received a phone call and left the house, never to return. Since then, no one has known anything about Hu Qian, and Tang Zhao is also searching for her. Tang Zhao also told the police that he had offered to give Qian a ride that night, but she refused and went alone. So why did Qian refuse to let her boyfriend take her? Who did Qian meet and where did she go? Who called Qian, and is the murder case related to that phone call? The police contacted the mobile network to check the call logs for Qian on the night of March 15th and confirmed that there was indeed a call, Hu Qian, at 9 p.m. that evening, and the identity of the caller was quickly determined. The caller's name was Wang Shudin, a 25-year-old from Ruiqian District, Guiyang Province. Based on the address from the registered domicile, the police discovered Wang Shudin's house but did not find him there. His parents told the police that Din was currently in Guangxi and had left Guizhou half a month ago, which coincided with the time of Hu Qian's murder. With the contact information provided by Din's family, the police quickly located him. Wang Shudin confessed to the police that he and Hu Qian met through an online chat application and had been living together for a while. They had just had their wedding ceremony on March 8th of this year, which was a week before the incident. Upon learning that the victim had been murdered, Wang Shudin's parents were completely surprised and told the police that Hu Qian was their daughter-in-law. However, there were some illogical issues. If it was true that Wang Shudin and Hu Qian had just gotten married on March 8th, then why was Hu Qian living with Tang Zhao on March 15th? Just 1 week after getting married, did she marry one person and go on a honeymoon with another? And why did both Tang Zhao and Wang Shudin assert that Hu Qian was living with them when she didn't have a twin sister to cause confusion? Could she possibly have the ability to be in two places at once, living with two men at the same time? Not to mention, both of them knew that Qian was pregnant. How could a woman like her maintain relationships with two men at the same time? The police speculated that one of the two men was lying. To clarify the case, the Guizhou police checked Qian's marriage registration again, but the complexity increased. It turned out that Qian was married, but her current and legal husband was a man named Tu not Tang Zhao or Wang Shudin. Furthermore, Hu Qian was currently living in Pingjiang District, Dongren, Guizhou. It was revealed that after an argument with her husband, Qian left her less than 1-year-old son with him and went to another place to live and work, seeking new relationships at the age of 20. She didn't divorce her husband, but never fulfilled the responsibilities of a mother. She didn't even care about her 2 children with the 2 men in her past, despite living very close to them. Therefore, both Tang Zhao and Wang Shudin were targets that Hu Qian deceived emotionally, and it is highly possible that one of them killed her after realizing they had been deceived. The police immediately launched a comprehensive investigation into Tang Zhao and Wang Shudin, collecting their blood samples and sending them to the DNA laboratory. The police also investigated the activity schedules of Tang Zhao and Wang Shudin during the time of the incident. During the investigation, Wang Shudin told the police that he did call Hu Qian on the evening of March 15th, but he was in Guangxi at that time, not Dongren, Guizhou. Through various investigations with Wang Shudin's friends and colleagues in Guangxi, the police confirmed that after Wang Shudin and Hu Qian got married on March 8th, a few days later, he went to Guangxi for work. So he was not present in the local area at the time of the crime, and the distance between Guangxi and Guizhou is quite far. Considering the time and distance, Wang Shudin did not have time to commit the crime, so he was removed from the list of suspects. Based on other information provided by the public, the police determined that on the night of March 15th, there was heavy rain in the Dongyan area. How could Qian, a pregnant woman of over 7 months, go out in such heavy rain? The phone call that Wang Shudin made after 9 p.m. was real, but he was in Guangxi, so the information that Qian went to meet the person who made this phone call is inaccurate. Perhaps the information that Tang Zhao provided to the police earlier was false, and he is definitely covering up something. The police raided Tang Zhao's house and thoroughly searched the bedroom where Tang Zhao and Hu Qian used to live together. At the crime scene, the police found some dark red spots on the floral tiles of the floor, very small circular spots with a diameter of only about 0.2 centimeters. There were also very small bloodstains in the form of splattered droplets on the mattress and the computer desk with a width of about 0.2 centimeters and a length of about 1 centimeter. There were bloodstains on the bedside table and even faint bloodstains on the wall due to wiping, indicating that the crime scene had been cleaned. The test results showed that the blood found at the scene belonged to the victim Hu Qian. Therefore, Tang Zhao's bedroom is very likely the primary crime scene, and Tang Zhao will be the main suspect in this case. Faced with such solid evidence, Tang Zhao had to admit that he himself was the killer of Hu Qian. He recounted that he is currently a taxi driver. In March of 2013, while he was searching for and inviting passengers at the Dongyan train station, he met Qian. At that time, Qian had just gotten off the train and got into Tang Zhao's taxi. Seeing this beautiful girl, Tang Zhao took the initiative to start a conversation, and the two had a very pleasant chat along the way. When they arrived at their destination, Qian got out of the car and they exchanged contact information and started talking to each other regularly. One night, Qian called Tang Zhao and asked where he was, requesting him to pick her up at her house. Because she was feeling sad and didn't know where to go, Qian decided to stay with Tang Zhao from that night onwards, and they began living together. At this time, Tang Zhao was not single, but his marriage had been going on for a long time without children, despite seeking treatment everywhere. The relationship between the two spouses was very cold, and they were in the process of getting divorced. A month after completing the divorce proceedings, Tang Zhao brought Hu Qian home and publicly announced this relationship to his family. Although living in Tang Zhao's house, Qian often came home early or late and said that she liked playing cards outside. Besides browsing the internet at home, searching for people online had become an important part of Hu Qian's life. Tang Zhao spoiled Qian, so he didn't inquire further about this matter. Sometimes Qian even left home and didn't return for a few days. To have a better life, Tang Zhao worked extra hours and drove both day and night, so he had no time to care about Qian. In fact, many nights Tang Zhao slept in his car instead of going home. After living together for a few months in October 2013, Qian began to experience fatigue symptoms. When they went to the hospital for a checkup, Tang Zhao made a big surprise discovery that Hu Qian was 2 months pregnant. Since Tang Zhao and his ex-wife had never had children, he was very surprised and immediately shared the good news with his family. To ensure that Qian could comfortably nurture the pregnancy, Tang Zhao's mother came from the countryside to take care of all the household chores. Tang Zhao's family did everything to make Qian's life as comfortable as possible, and every few weeks Tang Zhao would take Qian to the hospital for checkups and ultrasound scans. However, on a day in March 2014, Hu Qian told Tang Zhao that she would go to Guangzhou for about a week. Under the questioning of Tang Zhao, Hu Qian finally admitted that she had another lover named Wang Shudin, but when discussing the matter, Hu Qian showed no remorse, and it led to a loud argument between the two. Qian yelled at Tang Zhao, saying that the child in her womb was not his, but Wang Shudin's. Upon hearing this, Tang Zhao was shocked. This incident began nearly a year ago when Qian and Tang Zhao started living together, and she was not pregnant yet. Tang Zhao spent the whole day driving to earn money while Qian stayed at home and played cards. Feeling lonely at times, she went on social media to chat. In May 2013, Qian coincidentally met Wang Shudin through QQ chat, and they got along well during their online conversations. At that time, Wang Shudin was still working in Guangxi. In July 2013, Wang Shudin returned home to Dongren, Guizhou. Since they lived in the same area, Qian and Din quickly met each other in person. On the first day Din returned, Qian went to the train station to pick him up, and from then on their online romantic relationship quickly developed into real-life encounters. Compared to Tang Zhao, Wang Shudin was younger, more handsome, humorous, and knew how to please women. Qian was immediately attracted to him when they first met, and they rented a room in Dongren to spend a passionate night together. In the following period, Hu Qian frequently exchanged messages and went on dates with Wang Shudin. Their relationship grew stronger, so Qian often left Tang Zhao's house for a few days to be with Wang Shudin. When she was alone at home before being pregnant, her absence for several days didn't raise any suspicions from Tang Zhao's family, as her mother-in-law took care of the household chores. In reality, during that time, Hu Qian spent more time with Tang Zhao's family, but she never informed Tang Zhao's mother about her whereabouts. In fact, from the time Qian met Wang Shudin until her murder in March 2014, for a period of 10 months, Qian maintained a love triangle relationship with both men without being discovered. She constantly took advantage of their trust, telling them that she went out to play cards for a few days because she was bored, and when she was with Wang Shudin, she used the excuse of visiting her biological father's house and her older brother. In this way, she moved between the two men's houses, deceiving and manipulating both of them. In November 2013, Din noticed signs of Qian's morning sickness, so he took her to the hospital for a checkup and received the news that Hu Qian was pregnant. After Wang Shudin's family learned about this, they were extremely happy. Seeing Qian's growing belly, Din's family suggested that they go through the marriage registration process several times, but Qian refused because she was still legally married to the man named Tu. She often used the excuse of having a large belly and inconvenience in traveling to her hometown to obtain the necessary documents, promising to register after giving birth. On March 8, 2014, Din's family held a wedding reception for their son, and Qian witnessed by relatives and friends, but they didn't register the marriage according to local customs. After the reception, the two of them became husband and wife, but in reality, Din knew nothing about his wife's true circumstances. Whenever he asked about Qian's family, she remained silent and said that her mother had passed away early and she didn't get along with her father, so she didn't want to mention them. Tang Zhao knew about all of these things, and he even knew that Qian had deceived and embezzled a significant amount of money from another man. After tricking that poor guy, Qian immediately took the money and fled from Nantong, Jiangsu, back to Dongren, Guizhou. That day was also the day when Tang Zhao and Hu Qian met each other. In the future, when the police came to investigate and handle the marriage fraud case, Hu Qian had been living with Tang Zhao and had been staying outside due to her pregnancy. Because the case of Hu Qian's DNA fraud had been entered into the National DNA Database System. Tang Zhao also knew many bad things about Qian's past, but he still disregarded them and cared for her. However, time and time again, Qian pushed Tang Zhao to the breaking point. On the day the infidelity was discovered and Qian admitted that the child in her womb was not Tang Zhao's, his reaction to this situation was beyond everyone's prediction. Tang Zhao collapsed in agony and told Hu Qian that as long as the child carried his surname, he would keep the child's parentage a secret. Even if the child was not his biological child, he didn't care and would love the baby as his own. Upon hearing this, Hu Qian told Tang Zhao that she would break up with Wang Shudin and live with him to create a happy family for the child. Tang Zhao truly believed Qian's words, but on the evening of March 15, 2014, an unexpected phone call shattered everything. That night, while Qian and Tang Zhao were asleep, Hu Qian thought Tang Zhao was asleep, so when Wang Shudin called, she went outside the living room to answer the phone. During the phone call, Hu Qian agreed with Wang Shudin that she would come to his house in the next 2 days to live with him and wait for the birth of the child. Tang Zhao, lying on the bed, heard everything clearly. This deception followed another deception, fueling Tang Zhao's anger. In a fit of madness, Tang Zhao used a knife to attack and kill Hu Qian, then wrapped her body in a tarpaulin bag. Because Hu Qian's eyes were wide open and terrifying, Tang Zhao had to cover her face. He then took Qian's body to the Xinjiang River, tied a large cement brick to it and threw it in. Due to the large brick, the body quickly sank, and Tang Zhao stood there observing for a while before leaving. However, after more than 10 days, the body resurfaced and decomposed, and it was discovered by a ferryman. Initially, the police suspected that Tang Zhao was lying, but when the whole truth of the case came to light, it was revealed that Hu Qian, the victim, was the most deceptive. The case of the murder of a 7-month pregnant woman and the disposal of the body in the Xinjiang River had been resolved, but behind it all was a sigh of relief from everyone who learned about the case. Tang Zhao's act of killing especially killing a pregnant woman, was extremely cruel and unacceptable. However, when considering the events, Hu Qian, although a victim, also had a part of the blame that could not be denied. Hu Qian continuously played with the emotions of multiple men at the same time. Even until her death, she couldn't be sure who the father of her unborn child was. When comparing DNA, the police determined that Tang Zhao was the biological father of the fetus in Hu Qian's womb, not Wang Shudin as she had claimed. When the police informed Tang Zhao of this result in prison, he completely broke down and couldn't accept the truth. Tang Zhao showed deep remorse since his arrest, but upon receiving this news, it was beyond his endurance. He repeatedly banged his head on the table and cried bitterly. Tang Zhao had sought redemption in the hope of having a child, even willing to accept and raise a child who was not his own, but being deceived time and time again pushed Tang Zhao to the point where he couldn't control himself and ended up taking the lives of not only Hu Qian but also his unborn son. For Tang Zhao, this was the most terrible and unimaginably painful punishment. Although the victim had some part of the fault, this case became aggravated due to the murder of a pregnant woman, and Tang Zhao couldn't escape the death penalty. The consequences of this case were truly painful and heartbreaking, not only for Hu Qian and Tang Zhao, but also for the innocent little life that was permanently denied the chance to be born, caught in the whirlwind of money, love, and deception of adults.